I am joined by Larry Johnson, former CIA analyst and State Department counterterrorism official. Larry, welcome to the program. Great to have you.
Thank you, Nico.
Larry, let's begin with the central issue. How do you read the current US force movements in the region? Are we anywhere near a potential ground operation, or is this still just positioning? And based on your experience, what would we need to see to know that the ground operation is actually imminent?
Well, what we're seeing is the continued arrival of forces in the region. The 82nd Airborne they've been moving them since last week. So they fly out on a C-17. As I recall, I think the C-17 can take around 200 troops that are in full combat load. And so, it looks like they've moved close to 2,000 members of the 82nd, or maybe let's call it 1,600, a couple of battalions. The movement of other military equipment that could be used, like for amphibious operations, that's also moving to the area. So I don't think we could be days away from the United States launching a ground operation. If it happens, the soonest it would happen would be Friday night. So Friday night your time. Say a couple hours, when it's like 11 p.m. in Greece, then that'll be midnight, after midnight in Iran. That would be the kind of time frame that they would launch. The problem is the United States hasn't really defined, putting ground forces on, whether it's Karg Island or onto Kemish Island or the Kemish Peninsula, or capturing something like Bandar Abbas, the port. None of that makes any sense from a military standpoint in terms of defining what the mission is. It's almost like we just want to say that we took some territory and held territory in Iran for a brief period of time, because there are significant difficulties in getting troops inserted. There are three basic ways to put troops on the ground, or I could say four. Amphibious, launching from boats. Parachute, dropping from the sky. Landing via an aircraft, which, there are real limitations on that, because the odds are you would be under fire, and those aircraft would more likely than not be shot down. Or you can come over land. Now, but to come over land, again, you still need to have an assembly point. 23 years ago, when the United States got ready to invade Iraq, we assembled 165,000 troops with vehicles and tanks in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. Saddam really didn't have a very sophisticated missile force at all. He had some Scud missiles. But there was one attack, I believe, with those that killed a few troops. But other than that, the troops were fine. They were well protected. That wouldn't be the case today. You could not find a location in Iraq, because that's the only, you're going to attack either from Iraq or Pakistan, where you could assemble U.S. forces and that they would go unnoticed. That's not going to happen. And so once you notice them and locate them, you can hit them with a missile or with drones or some combination of the two. So there's and if you're going to do an amphibious assault on Karg Island, well, that's way up in the northeast corner of the Persian Gulf, just off the coast of Iran. How do those ships carrying the U.S. Marines get there? That means they'd have to go through the Strait of Hormuz, where they likely would be attacked and sunk. So the real problem, first problem, is how do you get them there? So let's assume that you can get them there, get them all landed at a particular location. Then what's their mission? To, like in Karg Island, are they going to, quote, turn off the oil? Or take, one of two possibilities: turn off the oil, but that means Iran's got 4 other outlets, so they're not dependent on KARG. They use KARG because of its convenience, but they're not dependent on KARG. It's not their lifeline. So if the United States wants to, as Trump suggested, destroy the oil wells of Iran, that doesn't make sense given what Trump and his Secretary of Treasury did just 2 weeks ago, where they lifted oil sanctions because why? Well, they wanted to get more oil out on the market.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're wanting to get more oil on the market, it doesn't make sense to go destroy a source of oil in Iran. Just that it doesn't make sense. So those troops, once they're on that island, they're not going to have any protection, and they will be attacked with drones. Apart from being attacked with the fighters who are already on the island, those fighters will be they'll be backed up with artillery from the mainland, from drones, and from missiles, both cruise missiles and other more powerful ones. So then you got wounded soldiers. Where are you going to take them to get treated? And how are you going to get them there? That means you're going to have to try to fly in helicopters, and those helicopters are very vulnerable to getting shot down as well. So this has every possibility of just turning into a big disaster. And I'm not sure the Trump people are thinking it through. I think they're not thinking, they're reacting emotionally. And that could get not only them in trouble, but get a lot of U.S. military personnel killed. So even though I think it's a foolish, stupid idea to put ground forces, try to put troops on Iranian soil, they're not going to be able to accomplish the mission, because ostensibly the mission is we want to get the Strait of Hormuz opened. Okay, how do you do that? Well, that means you've got to destroy or render inoperative the Iranian mini submarines and their torpedoes, the unmanned drone boats that just glide on the surface and can create a suicide attack on a boat, the underwater drones that operate like torpedoes but also can be steered, the air drones, the drones that are in the air that fly, and the rockets, missiles can be fired from caves on the shore.
Okay.
So to wipe all of that out would be an extensive, long drawn out military operation. So the reality is Strait of Hormuz is not going to be open for several months at a minimum.
So you do think that the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz can be a militarily achievable goal for the United States, or this is not the case? And as this continues, how do you see the economic dimension evolving alongside the military one?
Well, I am saying in theory, you could militarily get the strait open, but that would involve, more than 100,000 troops.
Astonishing.
It would involve months, probably a minimum of 2 to 3 months. And we don't have 100,000 troops yet to deploy. But you're going to have to deploy them and put them inside the country to shut down the drone launch pads and the missiles. So I mean, we can say theoretically it's possible, but it's not practical. It would be too costly. That's not going to happen. But I'm just saying it's if you're drawing up possibilities on paper, yeah, that's one possibility. The reality is the Strait of Hormuz is going to be under Iranian control for the foreseeable future. That Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, they're going to have to make a choice. They're going to have to decide to bury the hatchet with Iran, sign an agreement with Iran, and then agree to pay a fee to bring products in and out. I think they may ultimately do that. Right now, they're laboring under this fantasy that the United States can protect them, and the United States is powerful enough to defeat Iran. It's not. And they're going to learn that the hard way. I think the first to fall, it'll be either Bahrain or United Arab Emirates.
Oh, the Gulf states.
You know, look, United Arab Emirates. What a joke! I mean, it's a made-up country. It's not. This is not. It has no national, ethnic foundation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was not something called the Emirates going back 300 years, 400 years. You know, you had some tribal leaders running around. You know, there's individual tribes in that area. You know, what's really shocking is that in the United Arab Emirates, particularly in Dubai, they don't have a sewage system. I mean, you know, they got these major high-rise, 100-story tall buildings, but every morning trucks come in to empty out waste tanks. I mean, it's filled with human excrement.
Oh, God.
I mean, it's disgusting. But, you know, they don't have a sewer. They don't have any kind of sewage and treatment plant where that sewage is processed and cleaned up and then, done, disposed of in an effective way. I think they just drive out into the desert and dump the shit into the sand.
Oh, God.
I mean, it's disgusting. But right now, the United Arab Emirates is without any viable source of income. They've gone 1 month without any money coming in. And I think as this extends into 2 or 3 months from now, you're going to see they'll collapse politically, economically.
Very interesting. Larry, let's go back to history for a while. When Trump speaks of retribution for Americans allegedly killed by Iran over the past 47 years, what historical record is he actually invoking? And how solid is that claim? And if threats of striking Iran's power grid, oil infrastructure, and desalination plans were ever carried out, what would be the likely consequences both for the global economy and for Iran's military response?
Well, let's first deal with the claim that Iran has been this unrelenting enemy of the United States. September of 1980, Jimmy Carter's president, Zbigniew Brzezinski is vice president. Yes, Iranian students are holding over 50 Americans hostage at the U.S. Embassy. And they did so out of anger over the United States allowing the Shah of Iran, who had been deposed, who had been dethroned, to allow him into the United States, because the Iranians were fearful, legitimately so, that the United States would try to mount a counter coup to overcome the popular revolution. I can't emphasize enough that the Iranian Revolution of 1979, that was a genuine popular uprising. That was not a color revolution carried out by a foreign intelligence organization. The French did not engineer the ouster of the Shah, or the Russians, or the Chinese. So, starting in the September of 1980, the Carter administration, with a wink and a nod to Saddam Hussein, but let him know it was okay. Go ahead and invade Iran. We got your back. So then, 6 months later, Ronald Reagan's in office, and the interactions with Iraq continue, with Donald Rumsfeld being a point man, and the United States begins supplying chemical precursors that are used to make chemical weapons, weapons of mass destruction. That are then used against Iran. And so that's there are 20 chemical weapon attacks between August of 1983 and August of 1988. So the result of that Iraq-Iran war, that the United States was a sponsor of that war. In 1987 and 1988, we had a U.S. Military official, Colonel Patrick Lang, who hand-carried the intelligence to the government, to the Iraqi General Staff, U.S. intelligence that was being used to formulate war plans and attacks on Iran. So right away we see it was the United States that started attacking Iran, not vice versa. The Shia rulers in Tehran then provided support to the Shia in Lebanon, specifically Hezbollah, which emerged in 1982. Again, the attacks that took place against the Americans in Beirut in 1982, 83, it was because of the U.S. interference in the internal affairs of Lebanon on behalf of Israel. And, we always cite, they blew up the Iranian-backed terrorists blew up the Marine barracks, killed the Marines. Well, number one, that wasn't Hezbollah, it was Amal. Amal was a Shia organization that emerged in 1972, 7 years before the Islamic Republic of Iran came into being. And but the reason the Marine barracks was attacked is because the U.S. had warships off the coast that were firing shells into Lebanon, killing Lebanese Shia.
Wow.
So the point out of this is, despite the U.S. propaganda that Iran has been this unrelenting source of terrorism directed at the United States, it's been the exact opposite. The opposite has been the fact. The United States in 2003, during its invasion of Iraq, discovered Saddam Hussein had been supporting the MEK, the Mujahideen al-Khalq. MEK came into existence back in 1965. They described themselves as an Islamic communist organization. So they carried out terrorist attacks against the Shah and his government, and it was during that time that they killed American personnel assigned to the embassy. But then they evolved, and by 2003 they were focused on attacking the Islamic Republic. And the CIA discovered, once they realized who these people were, the CIA took them in, protected them, provided money, training, safe haven. And it wasn't until 2012 that the MEK was taken off of they had been a designated foreign terrorist organization since 1997. That status was removed in 2012. And then they proceeded to become an arm of the CIA, carrying out terrorist attacks in Iran to destabilize the government. So, like I said, this ludicrous notion that Iran has been this unrelenting enemy of the United States you can't point to a single Iranian terrorist attack inside the United States in the last 46 years. Not one. Now, a lot of pundits have tried to blame Iran for Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Those were CIA creations in part. So this had, it's a lie that is propagandized against Iran.
Larry, let me ask you now about negotiations. If there are no direct negotiations and communication is happening only through intermediaries now, who is actually negotiating with whom at this point? And given Iran's economic pressure, but also its leverage through the Strait of Hormuz, do you think Tehran can realistically withstand sustained US pressure? Or does the current balance suggest that Washington is the side under greater strategic constraint?
Have you seen the cartoon that's out? So it shows Donald Trump laying on a psychiatrist's couch, and the psychiatrist is sitting next to him with his notebook. Now there's nobody else in the room, just the two of them. And the psychiatrist says, "Now President Trump, the Iranians you've been talking to, are they here with us in the room now?" Treating him as if he's a schizophrenic patient who's seeing visions or hallucinations. So the United States and Iran, since Donald Trump has been in office, and my understanding is even that during Biden's time, have never held direct talks. It's always been through an intermediary. So I don't know if it was the foreign minister of Oman was playing that role up until February. He hosted in the meeting on February 26th, where the Iranians are in one room and the Americans in the other, and so the Omani official will go to the Iranians and say, okay, what do you want me to tell the Americans? And then he'll go back and he'll tell the Americans what the Iranians said, and the Americans will tell him what to tell the Iranians, and then that back and forth. He got a lot of exercise, I guess. That was good. But there were no direct contacts. Now that indirect contact method is being used with Pakistan. But Iran really is not. Iran's not looking for negotiations. Iran's not eager to enter negotiations. And I've explained it this way. It's a little harsh and it's a little crude, but I think it accurately captures the mood. If you had a daughter and a man raped her, would you be willing to sit down and have negotiations with that man? No, you'd kill the son of a bitch.
Right. It's quite.
And you know what? And I've been doing interviews with not just American personalities, but with people from around the globe. I did one with a gentleman from Pakistan. You know what? Men who are decent men, who have daughters and love their daughters, they all act the same way. It's not cultural. It ain't religious. It is a universal characteristic among men. You violate my daughter, I will kill you. That's how Iran has been raped by the West, by the United States and by Israel, and it is approaching those two countries exactly the same way. They're not interested in a peaceful settlement. This is going to be settled with them agreeing they're going to come to the terms that Iran is setting out on the table. And Iran's initial, the things that must be in place before there'll be any other negotiations about anything, is the lifting of all sanctions on Iran, the removal of all U.S. military personnel from the region, payment of reparations. Those are the essentials, the fundamentals. Then we can talk about, okay, how to bring maybe what can be done to get the Strait of Hormuz back in operation. But again, negotiating that's going to take some time. So that's why I said the normal economic activity that is not going to return to the Strait of Hormuz anytime soon. I think it's at least a month away or more.
Larry, based on what you have described yesterday about the Geneva episode, where expectations of an agreement were raised and then followed by a sudden strike by the United States against Iran, do you think this has permanently damaged US credibility? And if so, why would any country, especially Iran, as you said, still trust future negotiations with Washington? Have we finished with negotiations, as you said?
Let me turn the question to you. Would you trust the United States?
I'm not conducting any policy, but
if you were, if they came and tapped you on the shoulder and said, "Hey, we're going to make you foreign minister," would you trust the United States in negotiations based upon what you've seen them do with Iran?
I think we need to establish some credibility and mutual trust.
That's the point. There is no basis of trust with the United States. You can't trust a single word the United States has said. And to that end, there's nothing at this point, there is nothing for Iran to negotiate. It's going to continue to destroy U.S. military infrastructure in the Persian Gulf. It's going to continue to hit them with missiles. Every passing day that Iran fires ballistic missiles into the Persian Gulf and into Israel, they further deplete whatever remaining missile supplies that they have, particularly the PAC-3 for the Patriot and the THAAD. And even now, whatever exists of those missiles, they're largely ineffective against Iran's ballistic missiles, despite claims to the contrary. So the act of betrayal by the United States. Both last June, on June 13th, there were supposed to be peace talks held on Monday, June 16th. And instead, the U.S. had knowledge of and backed this attack by Israel on Iran. And then this year on February 28th, they met in Geneva on February 26th. They were supposed to reconvene in a meeting on Monday, March 2nd. And what happened? Again, betrayed. There's a cartoon in the United States. It's called Charlie Brown. And I don't know if you've were ever familiar with it.
No, unfortunately.
Overseas. So Charlie Brown was this good-natured, short, fat kid, and he had his nemesis was this dark-haired girl named Lucy, and Lucy was sort of a nasty piece of work, and so she had this. One of the recurrent themes in that cartoon was Charlie Brown wanted to kick the football, and so Lucy said, "Here, Charlie, come kick it. I'll hold it for you." Now, she's holding an American football, which is shaped like an egg. And that means you have to put it on the ground and put your finger on top. And so Charlie Brown would come running up to kick the football. And as he got ready to kick it, Lucy would pull it away. His leg went through the air, up in the air, fell on his ass, fell down. Wow. And so repeatedly over the years that this cartoon was being produced, for 30 years, there was always Lucy, "Oh, I'm not lying. This time I'm going to really let you kick the football." And Charlie would come up and try to kick the football and would fall down. That's the United States. The United States is Lucy. Iran is Charlie Brown.
Okay.
And they've made 2 attempts at kicking the football. I think going forward, the answer to the United States is no. We're not going to try to kick the football with you anymore. That's done. You're going to remove your military from this area. You don't need to have a military base in Saudi Arabia or in Qatar, because the only reason that you have that base is to attack us, and that's going to stop. And it's either you're going to stop it this way, or we will continue this until we wipe out every single base and every American that's in the Gulf. And that's. If I was advising, if Iran called me up and asked, "Hey, would you be our advisor?" That's what I'd advise. Don't go looking for some deal with the United States, because the United States cannot be trusted.
Larry, linking this whole thing to Ukraine now, what real leverage does the US still have? And can figures like Steve Witkoff still play a meaningful role given the limited results so far? As the Iran conflict unfolds... Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No. I said Witkoff, what he's done to the Iranians has also damaged his credibility with Russia. Because Vladimir Putin, now, why should I talk to you? Your word means nothing. There's nothing you can promise or say you're going to do that you will do. Mm-hmm. Moreover, candidly, going back to last August, the meeting in Anchorage, Alaska, what has the United States done in terms of a physical act to show Russia that it is serious about a peace agreement? Have they established, unfrozen the Russian assets? No. Have they returned the Russian property that was illegally seized in the United States in December of 2016? No. Have they reestablished normal diplomatic relations, allowing consulates in the United States in places like Washington, D.C. and New York, maybe Chicago, for people to go get visas? No. Have they reestablished direct flights between the United States and Russia? No. Have they withdrawn and shut off all the intelligence flow to Ukraine? No.
Is the spirit of Alaska still alive?
No, I think it's dead. And I think the Russians have concluded there is not a viable path forward in negotiations with the United States. The war in Iran is proving the limitations of U.S. military power. Because, the United States failed last March, April. Remember, for 7 weeks, starting early March, the United States tried to provide freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. And they were attacking the Houthis. And they spent 7 weeks attacking the Houthis, during which time the Houthis shot down one $35 million MQ-9 Reaper drone per week. Shot down seven of them in 7 weeks. So that was almost $250 million of drones shot down. And then the United States lost 3 different, I think they're F-18 aircraft. One from allegedly friendly fire. The other one crashed under mysterious circumstances. The third one somehow fell off the aircraft carrier. Never quite explained how that happened. So, the United States was unable to defeat the Houthis. Now here they are threatening Iran, but Iran's standing strong. Yeah, Iran's been attacked and has suffered some terrible damage and some terrible loss, but they're convinced that they can outlast the United States, and I think they're right.
Larry, before we wrap up, let me ask you 2 final questions. Bringing in the European dimension, with Spain now denying US use of its bases and airspace over the Iran operation, are we seeing the beginning of a real European divergence, or is Europe still effectively constrained and unable to act independently in this crisis? What do you think?
Yeah, no, well, it wasn't just Spain. You saw today, France did the same thing. So the French and the Spaniards, I think they're fed up with Donald Trump. I mean, let's admit it. Donald Trump he's behaved like a complete horse's ass. Very, uncivil, uncouth, rude, insulting. Nothing at all charming about him, and he has treated the Europeans with disdain, and I can't say, in some ways I don't blame him. Europe, by its own actions, has, forfeited any respect that they would want to be shown through their own weaknesses. But this is, let's put it in terms of a couple that once were married. Now they're both spouses are seeing other people, and they're sleeping in separate bedrooms, and they're don't really talk to each other much anymore. That's Europe on the one hand, the United States on the other. They're going in different directions. I think divorce is inevitable.
Let me ask you a final question that directly concerns our audience, our Greek audience, as the conflict in the Middle East, all these conflicts are moving closer to Europe's periphery. Recent statements by Dimitrios Houpis, chief of Greek National Defense General Staff, suggest that the conflict stems from attacks on Israel, identify Iran as a primary source of threat, frame the war as addressing broader international security risks, stress that NATO and Europe are well prepared, affirm Greece's support for Ukraine, and note that Russia has not supported Greece in critical moments. One could argue that this position appears somewhat paradoxical, but anyhow, given these positions and considering Greece's operational role through deployments such as Patriot systems to Saudi Arabia and the use of strategic bases such as Sudan, Crete, to what extent could Greece be considered indirectly involved in the current Middle East conflict, and does this increase its exposure to potential security risks of retaliation? And let me ask you more directly, is Greece still on the sidelines, or is it already part of the conflict?
No, I think it's still on the sidelines. I mean, it's verbally involved, but not physically actually doing anything of substance. It's a curious standard your defense fellow has. How many countries throughout the Middle East and in the world has Iran attacked? The answer is none. The only time that they really put their military force outside of Iran was in Syria at the invitation of Bashar al-Assad to fight Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Well, last I checked, the United States was supposedly attacked by Al-Qaeda on September 11th, 2001, and that then ISIS began leading direct attacks on the United States and set up a caliphate in Syria. It's only later that we learned that the United States CIA was also providing some support to ISIS and helping them stay intact. So I simply look at the fact that Iran has been the victim of Western terrorism, Western aggression, particularly the imposition of sanctions to it's a form of economic warfare against the citizens of Iran. And to the extent that Greece has supported that, that makes Greece complicit in what I consider to be a war crime.
Larry, thank you very, very much for your insightful and in-depth analysis. It's been a real pleasure having you, and I hope to have you back on the program again soon. Thank you very, very much. Much appreciated.
I appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
Thank you
Have a
very
good day.
good day. Thank you very much.